Hi, everybody. Today, I'm so excited to be talking with Gabriela Cavanagh and Jennifer Tiexiera. These two documentary filmmakers have worked behind the scenes, directing, producing, and editing for years, and have now teamed up to work on this project together. We're here to talk about their powerful new documentary feature film, Rebecca, which follows global pop star Becky G as she releases her debut regional Mexican album and embarks on her first headlining tour. So, to start off, I would love to know more about how Rebecca first came to be. Was the film put into motion by Becky, her label, or by the two of you?
So Jen and I both met Becky separately, but I think we both shared a very similar experience when we first met her, that we were pretty much immediately in awe. And the early conversations we had with her, she spoke a lot about putting to words the experiences of children of immigrants, first, second generation, in ways that we had never really heard done before. So we knew that millions of people would connect with her words. And fast forward, when we saw she had her first headlining tour, we reached out in the hopes of, capturing this moment, this milestone in her career and exploring some of those themes. But very quickly, the project evolved and it became clear that, this wisdom that she carried was a product of really hard won personal growth. And that growth was very much still in process and in progress. And she was very open to sharing that story. So it sort of all the stars aligned that she was like in this very unique moment in her life and career.
And what was that collaborative process like between the two of you as co-directors and with Becky herself as both the subject and executive producer?
Yeah, I love co-directing. I think it's what's better than one is two. Gabby was in the field. She's got an amazing eye, so that was really helpful. I have my experience as an editor. She also has experience as an editor. And I think as far as my filmmaking process, with Lady and Bird, and I'm very collaborative. So wanted this not to be any different. We knew that we were going to be asking or hoping that Becky would share some, it wouldn't just be a music doc. I don't think anyone wanted a music
Right.
doc or a typical tour doc. And that's not what really interested us in the story. I'm super big. I'm like very pro therapy and mental health. And
Same.
remember hearing you one time on a podcast, a Jay Shetty podcast, and I didn't know it was her. And like listening to this young girl speak about, generational trauma and identity,
Hmm.
cultural identity. I'm barely hammering out in my 40s and was just blown away. And just the knowledge that she can, maintains. And so I think that we knew that it was going to be a very close partnership, the three of us, between the three of us. And that's what it ended up being. And that's how it evolved along the way.
And Gabriella, this was your directorial debut. So what was a major learning moment for you while making this?
Oh my goodness. Major learning moment. There were so many. I think one of the best like advice I got was about this collaborative experience from Jen. It's just like co-directing is the best thing ever. And especially on your first feature, having someone like Jen with so much experience whose work I already admired so much alongside you. I feel so grateful for it. So it was just, learning that it's okay to share and collaborate and just, lean on other people as much as you can throughout the process.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I feel like a big learning curve was just like the power at the flip side of like really intimate filmmaking and sort of unlearning a little bit of what I had in these last 10 years on other projects that, sometimes it's just very powerful to have a one person crew and it doesn't have to look flashy and be a big multicam shoot to get these really intimate moments. So learning to lean on those skills too.
Did you both have any specific goals or intentions when you started the project, specifically when it comes to crafting the emotional arc, or did it all unfold naturally just through filming?
I mean, you always just want to do justice to your participant, right? So I think
Hmm.
that is at the end of the day, you want something that represents her and her power and her individuality, and making sure that we do that in the most authentic way possible, that we all feel good about, and kind of having that. I think at the end, what we hope for is that this is all bigger than us, right? And that we
Mhm.
see ourselves in the stories. She's so accessible in that way because she's lived so much life in her
Sure.
27 years. And I think that that's, at the end of the day, we can all be really proud of this being out in the world. And so other families can see themselves and her family that were so brave to share these stories with us.
And for a film like this, where you followed Becky as she worked on a new album and also on her tour, what was the timeline like from pre-production to finishing the film? And how did that project evolve as you filmed and then during post-production?
Yeah, so I think our very first shoot day on this project was the first day of Becky's tour. So right immediately we were sort of launched into that process on the road, trying to capture as much as we could and still, building that relationship while that unfolded. So there's definitely many parts of the stories we didn't know until many months into
Hmm.
filmmaking and building that trust. But overall it was a pretty quick process. I think that tour was in September, and then we finished the edit by June of the following year. So
Oh,
it was all
wow.
quite fast, start to
Yes.
finish. And we were, yeah, shooting at the same time as editing for the second
Okay.
half.
And there's such a strong balance in the film between interview clips and cinema verite scenes and also family videos and older footage of Becky. What is that process of determining what to use and when? And how do you craft that balance? And is that something that's planned in pre-production or does that just unfold in the edit?
Well, I mean, that was like a treasure trove. I don't think that any of us could have ever imagined the amount of, and that's
Mhm.
hats off, Alex, Becky's mama. I mean, this woman, film your
Hmm.
kids, because you never know. I mean, but it was just like, we realized pretty early on that if Becky mentioned it or one of her siblings or even mom mentioned it, there was probably video of that, and
That's
which was
amazing.
unbelievable.
Hmm.
Which just becomes fun in the edit, right? I mean, a lot of work and digging and stuff like that, but that's kind of what we live for, is just like, oh my gosh, she told this story, we have all of it. Um, and so that was just like a beautiful exploration and why we started the edit as early as we did once we saw the amount of archival that Alejandra had. And then it's just like we really let the story tell itself. I think when you have that kind of gift of the archive mixed with this beautiful tour footage that, Gabby shot so much of, and it was that one camera intimate,
Oh,
relationship.
yeah.
And then, and then we have the concert, and then we have the stuff that, the more flashier things, more
Hmm.
flashier events that are happening. You just have to trust in the story itself and really just let it kind of unfold in the way that it tells you it wants to.
And I know you're both also editors. So how does your expertise in editing influence your filmmaking styles and your methods there?
Well, we always end up
Yeah.
doing.
I
I
thought
think,
so.
yeah, for me, this was the first time that I was like actually DPing a project after having spent quite a few years editing. And it was a very different experience coming into it with this new skill set. So
Mhm.
for a lot of the tour, it was like single camera coverage of concerts, and I found myself trying to piece together, okay, if I'm going to put all of this together from multiple cities, multiple pieces as one performance, trying to like edit in my head. So one night I would focus on like audience reactions. One night I would get like close-ups of the instruments and the guitar and the trumpets and just try to edit it in my head, but like while shooting all the elements. So that was an interesting and fun new experience for me.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I
definitely.
should probably give very appropriate shout out to the two editors that we had
Hmm.
on the project. Lauren, Alex Bose and Lauren Safa. They're just brilliant. And
Yeah.
so this is a collaboration I've had with the two of them for quite some time, and it was just really fun to like have them bring it to life in that way. And to your point, find the balance between the intimate stuff and the archive and everything else that you see the film has in it.
Yeah. And along these same lines, can you talk about any intentional choices you made with the cinematography or editing to support the emotional arc? I know you mentioned that like it kind of you let it unfold as it goes, but was there anything that came up while you were editing and then still filming?
Course. I mean, it was intimate, right? It was
Hmm.
so intimate. And I think that's really reflected in the shots that, Gabby got when she was with Becky, when it was just the two of them. I also think that like a lot of the archive really influenced a lot of the shoots we planned. You know, I fell in love with the Mexico footage and all the stuff on Poppy's farm and Jalisco. And
Yeah.
so we made sure that we went back there, right? And we really had to be there to understand, you know, like the way Becky's voice cracks when she speaks about this time in her life. You had to be there. So a lot of the archival informed not only the way we shot it, but where we shot as well as we went, you know, after the tour had settled down a little bit and we were getting into more of the stuff that comes later.
And there are vulnerable and deeply emotional moments in the film. We see Becky open up about her mental health and her panic attacks, and we learn a lot about her parents and their journeys and struggles as well. So I'm curious to know more about how you built that trust with Becky and her family to capture those vulnerable moments on camera, and how you built a safe place that allowed for all of them to open up.
Sure. This is another just like, I mean, I scream from the rooftops how much I love this girl, but this was a moment where that it just really resonated personally, because when we were talking about some of the stuff that her family had been through, especially around addiction and her parents' marriage, you know, she said, like, this is a huge part of my life, but truly it's not my story to tell. That's it, you know, and so it was a long conversation with both Alex and Frank of where they are. And I always say this, you know, it's really hard to tell these stories when you're in it, but if there is a light at the end of the tunnel and you can, it's like, you don't want all of that necessarily to happen in vain, right? And so because her family was in such a healing part, they had been doing the work and were continuing to do the work, and a reconciliation was on the horizon and things, I think it became like, okay, a lot easier to consider. And then it was a lot of conversations. It was a lot of conversations with Alex and with Frank being like, collectively, do we want to do this? Is this the medium in which, you know, we want to aid in this healing? And, you know, we decided yes. And again, it was a collective decision, but ultimately Alex and Frank's, because they were the two who had lived through it. And then making sure that Becky's siblings felt comfortable with what we had on screen, and they were involved in every screening of the film through post, as well as their dad and mom, obviously. But that was also a very collaborative process as well.
Becky's relationship with her family, specifically her grandparents, was a major through line in the film, and these moments definitely made me cry a few times while watching. What do you think are the key elements to capturing the emotional depth of this story on camera, and how do you successfully translate those emotions through the screen to the audience?
I mean, I think for me, the leaning into the archival is what I think a lot of us connected to, and seeing her relationship with her grandparents. I know for me, like seeing those scenes of, you know, all her cousins on Christmas on the floor, you can't even see the carpet. There's so many people. And I was like, I know so many people like me
It's
would
so
relate.
relatable. Yeah.
Relatable. And just the fact that, you know, how much time she spent in that home, and in a way that a lot of her communities happens, that you were raised by not just your parents but your grandparents.
Definitely.
So I think just really leaning into that archival that just immediately connects. It sort of speaks for itself, to show those relationships on screen.
And this is just me being curious, but do either of you have a favorite scene or moment in the film?
I mean, I have a few.
Hmm.
I don't know, Gabby, do you want to go first?
Yeah. I mean, I was just rewatching this like right before. So there's like a scene where Becky's recording a song in the studio, and then she gets like a call from her grandma, and her grandma's like, "Ven a comer, like I made caldo, it has lots of vegetables, come over." And I was like, that is like so, like you couldn't script it. It was so perfect. And I just feel that was like one of my favorite little moments. But gosh, there's so many. Obviously, when Becky and her dad reunite on screen for the first time
Oh my gosh.
was such a powerful moment in the film and in real life. And we just felt very privileged to be allowed into that moment in their journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering how much we can give away.
I know I don't want to like throw out all the spoilers,
Spoiler
but
alert, spoiler alert. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, my first clip is from like the first 2 minutes.
Yeah,
yeah.
also like I mean, the one that gets me every time is when she brings her abuelas on stage. I just
Oh my
am
God.
a
I
baby.
cried.
I am such a bit, and like I'm like, oh my God, I've seen this so many times, and it's like, and she's like, this is all for you. It's just, yeah, it's just that moment of just pure joy.
It was so beautiful. Yeah, that was the moment. That was a tearjerker for me completely. But now I'll turn to a little more of a technical question. When it comes to including concert footage and Becky's music, what is the licensing process and the production planning that goes into all of that? And is it different? Is it a different process since she's the executive or one of the executive producers?
No, I wish it was. And I it's so tough, right? I think there's, we touch on it a little bit in the film, but there is a lot of politics around labels, and
Yeah.
this was not something, it was something that we all kind of deal with, but this was definitely next level. There was a lot of licensing agreements that needed to happen and union agreements and
Hmm.
legal and fees that I don't think anyone could possibly imagine. So I, uh, yeah, I want to be as PC as possible about it. But I do think that Becky's role as the EP is because she was so closely tied to the heart of the film and the story that we decided to tell again
Hmm.
collectively. But it didn't get there wasn't much of there's a little bit of a bro deal, but not much.
Okay.
Yeah, I think on the flip side, while we have this urge that we wish that we had so much more of her music in the film, it actually made us very, very selective with what
Hmm.
we were able to use, and just made us even more intentional in the edit of what we chose. Like the moments that we do include her music and the songs had to really add to the storytelling, add to the larger thing that we're trying to tell. So every song was precious in the film.
Definitely.
100%.
Yeah. It makes it so much more intentional and you could feel it throughout the film. And we here at the Light Leaks, we really appreciate candid conversations about the realities of funding and financing films because it's so complex and different each time. And for this film, since you were working with a major artist, does funding look different? Was the label involved? How did it differ from financing other independent projects you've been a part of?
This was a Live Nation funded project.
Okay.
So it was not funded by the label.
Okay.
Uh, so which is, definitely a gift. They're great partners.
Hmm.
But again, it as we all know, this ever-changing landscape, it's just like no one can keep up. I don't know how much funding that they're doing now compared to like when we started this, when they
Right.
signed on to this 3 years ago. Um, and I think it will kind of just kind of depend on how all the films that are coming out now do, since there's not a lot of buyers lining up to buy things.
Hmm.
So, I think that this has a great chance of being bought, especially with like, I mean, I think that our community has proven their thirst, and through the Karol G documentary, and like, I'd like
Hmm.
we show up, our community shows
Definitely.
up. I think that this is Becky's fans. We're already seeing it with Tribeca. I've never had this sort of outreach with any of my films before. So, but yeah, this was a Live Nation.
And you both have experience editing and directing films centering around performers and the act of performing, specifically through music and dance. What draws you to these stories, and what do you think makes documentaries about these artists and their craft so powerful?
Yeah. So I first fell in love with incorporating performance into the doc when I produced a series called Nightgowns. That was like hybrid documentary and drag performance, like music video styles.
So cool.
And I just was so in love with how differently you viewed the performance after you had learned so much about their lives. And likewise, how much the performance added to the documentary side, and like it allowed you to do things that no other filmmaking tools in your toolkit are able to do. So I just fell in love with that format of blending those two things. And I think again, that's why, each performance in the film that takes place, we really hope it adds to getting to know Becky in a deeper way. And vice versa, I just think they really play with each other so beautifully.
And Jen, along with being a director, editor, and producer, you are also the co-founder of the production company Lady and Bird Films, which you mentioned earlier on in our conversation. How does that role influence your filmmaking process or your motivations during production?
It's funny. I get asked a lot a question a lot about what I try to tell younger filmmakers. And truly, it's definitely find your tribe. Lady and Bird started much as a collective. The three of us were like, we were editors, we were producers, we were DPs, and we're like, we can make anything we want with the three of us, and no one can tell us no. And that's really what, and then we just started all working on each other's films. Before we knew it, we had a slate, and now we're EPing, and we have, like another, 4 films coming out in the next year. But truly, it's like the three of us are like-minded. The slate just kind of evolves itself, right? But what we've been able to offer to one another is a support and a home that makes this job doable. So it's less about how like us are like what our company influences in the field. I'm so sorry, influences in this field, but really what the what we're able to take to the field, because we're in this group of women that are here and that we can always call when things are super difficult. And yeah, it's been, and then being able to offer that to younger filmmakers or friends or whatever, it's been such a gift. So yes, we all three have to agree. It's very like diplomatic in that way. We all have to agree when we take on a project. We all support each other. We discuss the roles on the project. And we talk about financing and how, is this going to be the ones that we go out for grant money or not grant money, or is this the one with private financing, equity? We all have different relationships, which is really helpful. But truly, it's about sisterhood and community at the heart of it.
I love that. Community and collaboration are everything, especially in this industry. It's so important. Gabby, I saw a photo you posted on Instagram of you as a child filming on a camcorder, and that photo really inspired my next question. What would each of you share to your child selves about your creativity and your career journey so far, and any advice or words to support her as the younger version of yourself?
Oh my goodness, gonna cry. I would tell my younger self that like all of these things that you love, all these creative things, to like take them very seriously. It took me a while to remember, whether it's like filming that I love doing, like from age like 10 to 18, it took me many years after to find this career, or even other things that I love doing, like ceramics and all these things I let go, what brought me joy in my youth, I find myself now, like in my 30s, rediscovering again, be like, why did I ever let this go? So I would just tell myself, like, take those things seriously. You can have a job. These are real jobs. Like, go for it. Don't feel like you need to do something else. Do what makes you happy.
Yeah, no, I'm a little bit more, I get a little bit emotional too when I think about my younger self. I was just so hard on myself all the time and so down on everything that I did. And I just, I know that the trust in yourself and the self-love comes with time and growing older and all that stuff. But I wish I had a little bit more of it then, of just a little bit more grace that I could give myself. Because, I think that, we're all trying to do the best we can. And yeah, I think about that. I just, a lot of sleepless nights that I think were a little unnecessary.
Along with this, what advice would you give to any women, non-binary or Latinx filmmakers looking to tell stories that honor both truth and artistry?
Find your tribe. I always say it, find your group of like-minded people. They're gonna support you. They're gonna carry you. They're gonna be the ones who, we're so scrappy as a community, at the doc community, but it's just, we always find a way, but it's a lot easier to find a way with people who share your passion and the way you see the world. Yeah, because it's hard enough.
And lastly, I would love to know, what's your hope for what you'd want audiences to take away after they watch Rebbeca?
I think for me, what we ultimately hope is that this is a really inspiring story. One of my favorite lines from the film is when Becky says that oftentimes our stories about our community are told from this place of pain, but it's actually what we become of it that's really beautiful. And I think that's true for our community. That's true for her family's story. And so I hope it feels like a celebration of our community, of our people, and that people come away feeling inspired to grow and to always find, better versions of themselves.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's hard not to, as I sit in the middle of Los Angeles, in the middle of Koreatown, it's hard not to like try to just the more faces, the more stories that we can see of like where we come from, and understanding of like what the attack is the attack is happening on these families right now. And this could be the grandparents of the next Becky G, or the parents, I just, these people who contribute so much to our communities, who are like my daughter's teachers, and, like the people who, not to mention the people who like grow our food and everything else like that. But like, we're such this beautiful, strong community, and it's so important to have faces with these communities. And this film is just that, as we, as we ask others to join and fight in this craziness that's happening around us right now.
It's vital. I mean, as Latina, as a Mexican American, like I know this story of hope and joy is vital right now, especially, but just seeing it in general, like I was so moved by watching it. It was beautiful. So thank you for your work. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us. This was amazing. Everybody, you can follow the Light Leaks for more interviews, filmmaker spotlights, and community-led content that amplifies women and non-binary voices in film. I'm Mercedes. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.